Hi, my name is Felix and I'm presenting to you Adorned in Memes, exploring the adoption of social wearables in Nordic student culture. Wearables have become part of our everyday life, exemplified by the smartwatch. Over the last 2 decades, actually, researchers have engaged in using them not just as personal devices, but to function as a supporting element in our face-to-face social interactions. However, we have not seen any widespread adoption of so-called social wearables. Most wearables still focus on health-related use cases. Scholars have identified social factors and context as the essential aspects for adoption. That includes aesthetics, social identity, cultural norms, and privacy. Looking at this, there's a clear need for exploring people's lived experiences to understand better how they can integrate those promises of social wearables. To this end, we actually try to understand the utilization of social wearables in Nordic student culture. Nordic students, especially in technological fields, practice a very rich cultural practice of adorning boiler suits, wearing them, and then actually adding content to them. Each student receives one of those overalls when they join their subject association, and each subject association has a different colored overall. So we have clearly a form of affiliation and group membership. But on the other side, these overalls are adorned and added to on over the course of time, based on personal interests, but also achievements that give you a certain badge of honor. Based on this cultural practice, we actually used co-design to create something with the students. We call this Digi Merkki, and it's an interactive clothing patch. Digi Merkki had two different main functionalities. On one side, there were LEDs that were visible from afar and that could show different animation based on your relationship to nearby people and their proximity. Additionally, these LEDs also could show synchronized animations that support singing or other activities. On the other side, there was the functionality that was provided by the small thumbnail screen to show pictures and actually trade them between different participants. We looked at how the students actually made use of this in a 2-week elicitation diary study, including some organized events. And we could clearly see how Digi Merkki was used as a material in these existing social and cultural practices. But not only did Digi Merkki as a material shape existing practices, we also observed emerging social practices and how students navigated those. For example, students engaged in a form of spamming, which was an unexpected feature based on the functionality of the patch. A particularly interesting aspect was that students engaged actively in meaning making. The cat picture that we can see here was actually shared especially for this kind of teasing while hijacking an interaction between two other people. And you can see in the network graphic how this was used among all participants, and the meaning of the cat picture then also was adopted by more and more people. On the other hand, some participants also did the contrary. So they had their own idea about spreading a certain information here, for example, Digbud, and they were motivated exactly because some participants did not want to trade with them this particular picture. If we look at this spamming, but also other ways our interactive clothing patch was used, we can see how there was a structural element throughout all these practices which relate to memes in digital culture. We can see this in their challenges that were actively introduced by students to generate more social interaction, but also, of course, the content that participants were using that related to existing online memes. Based on this, we formulate a strong concept for design we named memetic expression. We invite designers to create participation tools that enable people to remix existing memetic content. That means that people can reappropriate existing content and then also personalize it. Through sharing and propagating this actually creates discourse between people and can create community. This way, memetic expression can help the adoption of social technology, particular social wearables. We can see this mechanism generally in digital memes, like, for example, in image macros. I want to invite you to look at our article for more details on how we use generative design research and co-creation to actually involve the participants and the students in our process. That actually also helped involvement and them adopting it in their practices. Further, we also go a little bit more in detail how we believe this active help in meaning making and a dialogical perspective on a lot of these factors is important when we design social technology. Thank you.